Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad that you took some time out to tune into this webcast that's going to all of our Leadership Summit host teams all around the world. I especially want to welcome the more than 70 new teams that are going to be hosting Global Leadership Summit gatherings for their communities. As you noticed, I used the word global this time in front of the title of the Leadership Summit. It's always been called the Leadership Summit, but this year we're calling it the Global Leadership Summit from here on out because this event, this experience truly has become a global experience. There are leaders all over the world. I mean, last year we had altogether more than 120,000 leaders experience the Global Leadership Summit in their communities from 55 countries, translated into 26 different languages. And here's the cool thing. For the first time last year, more leaders experienced the Global Leadership Summit outside the United States than inside the United States. And it's truly unprecedented, I think, of what I know anyway, in Christendom, that this many leaders would gather around common content, all for the sake of becoming better leaders for the sake of Christ. And over the years, we've heard of so many stories of just the things that happen because of the summit. Compelling movies get created, not-for-profits get started or taken to whole new levels. We've had careers that got redirected, and tens of millions of dollars have been mobilized to serve the poor around the world. And Bill, I know a lot of new teams are tuning in with us today, and wondered if you could just kind of briefly talk to us about how the summit gets started, why do we do it, and did you ever think that it would turn into what it's turned into from that first one in '95?
Yeah, I think actually the birthplace of the summit was when I was trying to figure out what was the common denominator of prevailing churches around the world. I was asking myself, is it a particular denomination that causes some churches to flourish and others to just kind of lose their way? Is it location? Is it resourced versus under-resourced? Is it good preaching? What is the common denominator amongst churches that seem to be high-functioning and really God-honoring? And I remember coming to the conclusion the common denominator was great leadership. Yeah. Somebody was casting a vision, somebody was pulling a team together, and somebody was solving the church's problems and inspiring and motivating and getting congregations to behave like Acts 2 says it should. And so when I put that together in my head, I said, well, why wouldn't we convene leaders of churches and try to just do a massive infusion into the hearts and minds of leaders, this massive infusion of energy and vision and encouragement, scriptural challenge and all the rest, to see if we can raise the level of leadership up one notch, and then another over time.
Yeah, and I remember you didn't want this to be just another leadership conference. I mean, it was, you wanted to have some irreducible kind of core values. And let me go over some of those and just jump in and comment on those. Number one, first and foremost, we wanted it to be unapologetically Christian. No question about it. Grounded that way. Unashamedly church leader focused. I mean, we're very sensitive and want all the business leaders to come for sure, but we want to help church leaders get better in building their churches. Intentionally world class. We wanted this to be a high mark. We wanted it to be intellectually sophisticated. So sometimes we'll challenge you in different ways, even sometimes give opposing views on something and just challenge you to sort through that and come up with something your own position.
Yeah, let me jump in there, Jimmy. This thing being world class, that means a lot to me. And when I was a very young leader, a mutual friend of ours, Bob Buford, came to me one time and he said, how could I really help you other than just, peel off $100 bills? And I said, well, that would help actually at the time. But I said, what, other than money, the greatest service you could render to me would be to get me in the room with some world-class leaders that I could never have entree with. Yeah. And he said, well, I think I can do that. And that's when he made it possible for me and a small group of other people to first meet Peter Drucker.
Peter Drucker, yeah.
And we would spend days and days with this, towering leadership figure. And then later when we moved to start the Leadership Summit, I thought, well, maybe when this event grows in scale, we could do what Bob did for me. Yeah. We could Present to pastors the best leaders in the world, and grant them entree to an experience with them that they could get in no other way. And the other thing that you mentioned is we will never dumb the summit down. I mean, we want this thing to be intellectually rigorous. We want it to create disequilibrium in the lives of people. We want people to say, you've messed with my brain again. And we think that the best kind of growth happens is when people kind of get pushed off the center point and have to listen, as you said, to opposing views or to stretching views. And so we like the summit that way.
Well, and I love that disequilibrium thing that you were talking about. And we first kind of came across this when Harvard asked Willow to do a case study at the Harvard Business School. I just talked to the sponsoring professor of that original case study a few weeks ago, Len Schlesinger, former faculty member of the summit. And he was the first guy that I heard talk about how do you leverage disequilibrium for learning's sake. Yeah. He said, I love Willow Creek case study in the middle of the Harvard Business School curriculum because it messes with the students. Yeah. They're like, you know, they're thinking they're doing 800 cases on businesses, and then all of a sudden there's this one on a church, and it freaks them out. And he says, but I'll guarantee you, the lessons are there to be learned, and they will remember that case study long after they've forgotten all the others that are all kind of the same.
Yep, true.
And so we kind of flipped it. Here was the business community learning from a church, and we're a church learning from any of the communities out there on leadership, and it does create some disequilibrium, but it's intentional, and it's by design. How about this one? Serious about diversity and justice issues. Where'd that one come from?
Well, I mean, we live in a very diverse world. And we have concern for the church around the world. We have concern for the urban church. And we certainly have concern for the global church. And so our feeling is we need to have input from various parts of the world, various ethnic faculty, certainly across gender. And along these lines, too, not just racial diversity. I like it when we have people from disciplines or arenas other than just the church world. Right. Yeah. Sometimes church leaders just talk to themselves, and they reinforce each other's already firm convictions. And we want that stretching thing to happen. And so we've had people from the political realm, from the military realm, from the athletic realm, from the business realm, arts realm, and it just helps you look at leadership through a different lens or a different prism. Pretty helpful thing to do. Yeah.
So, Bill, why don't you introduce our first faculty member who is a longtime Summit friend?
Yeah, Jim Collins is coming this year, and the way this actually transpired, it is almost like a little joke that I pulled on Jim. He came out with his new book, How the Mighty Have Fallen, and the subtitle is Why Some Companies Never Give In. How is it that some organizations get into a slump, and then what do they do sometimes that's injurious to their own organization to try to get out of a slump? So he had sent me kindly a copy of his book, and I read it in 2 settings and was so excited about it that I said to Jean, my assistant, just call Jim out of the blue and see if I can have a phone conversation with him. So she placed the call. He picks up the phone. And so I said, Jim, I just finished reading your new book, and I want to know if you'll come on Thursday this year to the summit or on Friday this year to the summit to talk about the new book. And he paused for just a second, and he said, well, I guess either day would work. And I said, well, that's great. And now let's just talk about the content of the book. And so we had a wonderful chat about the content of the book. And at the end of the call, he said, did I commit to coming to the summit? And I said, yeah, I didn't tape it, but I'll call you a liar if you don't come. And so he's coming, and I've had several follow-up conversations with him. This is one of the best concepts, leadership concepts, I've ever heard. Yeah. You read the book. I gave it to you next and went through it.
Our entire leadership team. I mean, it's just a phenomenal book.
Yeah, I would bet that this is going to be one of the most highly rated sessions at the summit this year.